The day I knew I didn't matter anymore, the intern spelled my name wrong on the coffee run spreadsheet. Not a big deal, you'd think. Except I created that damn spreadsheet. Back when Stratwell Dynamics wasn't Stratwell yet, just five of us squatting in a borrowed WeWork conference room that smelled like someone's leftover tie and failed ambition. My name, Barbara Klein, was literally in the header of our earliest incorporation draft. Back then, my fingerprints were on everything: HR guidelines, founders' equity split memos, vendor onboarding forms, the color palette for our first investor deck. And yet here I was, 20 feet from the snack wall I negotiated into our first series lease, being mistaken for Brenda. Or was it Beatrice? We were nobodies at first. Just a few desperate souls with bad credit, good ideas, and duct-taped laptops. I still remember the day we hired our first accountant, meaning we got a guy named Kyle who could open QuickBooks without crying. There were no job titles. You were whatever needed doing that week. I was ops, finance, recruiting, marketing, compliance, and sometimes office janitor, depending on how many La Croix cans had exploded in the shared fridge. There was no HR because I was HR, no CFO because I was the one explaining burn rate to the founders with hand-drawn pie charts and a whiteboard I stole from my ex's garage. I wasn't a founder on paper. That honor went to Rick, Jonah, and Megha. But I was the one who took their half-baked ideas and made them make sense to people with money. I cleaned up their pitch decks, rewrote their rambling emails to VCs, made sure their vision didn't come off like a cult pamphlet. When the lawyers handed over our first governance charter, they practically begged someone to help simplify it so our founders didn't look like toddlers playing corporation. I rewrote the damn thing in a single night, cross-referencing Delaware corporate code with coffee-stained notes and Slack arguments about board structure. That founder's operational continuity clause, my idea. Buried deep in section 12.4b, under the legalese, it was a safety hatch. Parachute for early key personnel, meant to protect people like me from getting shoved aside when the company grew up and got shiny. We called it the ghost clause back then. A nod to how the people who built the place would eventually become invisible. And invisible I became, slowly over time. It wasn't a guillotine. It was death by calendar invite. I stopped getting added to strategy calls. My project budgets started arriving pre-approved. Jonah stopped looping me into board prep meetings. One day, my email signature changed without anyone asking me. Director of Strategic Enablement. What the hell even is that? A glorified yes-woman with a broken voice in meetings where real decisions had already been made. I watched as newer, shinier faces entered with their MBAs and their LinkedIn speak. They talked in acronyms and smiled too much. They knew nothing of the years we spent scraping by. Nights I slept on the office couch because the servers were crashing and no one else knew how to reboot the damn things. They didn't know the company. Not the way I did. They knew the brand. The awards, the post-Series C glitz. I knew the skeleton under the skin. The leaky data stack held together with duct tape and promises. The weird legacy vendor relationships we never documented properly. The investor side letters that Rick signed drunk at that ski lodge in Tahoe. It was the memory of the place. And memories don't get seats at the table, they get archived. There was one moment about 6 months ago that should have warned me how far I'd fallen. Rick, one of the original three, passed me in the hallway and said, "Remind me, are you on Megha's team now or?" I just smiled and nodded. He didn't know where I sat. The man whose expense reports I once filled out during his divorce didn't know where I sat. So I made a decision that night, alone in my apartment with an untouched microwave dinner and a half-dead houseplant for company. I dug through my encrypted archives, pulled out the original charter. Section 12.4b, still there, still valid. I cross-checked it against our most recent internal bylaws, yep, still binding. I clicked open a dusty folder labeled continuity provisions, and there it was, my name, my original addendum. Never rescinded, never overwritten. Just forgotten. Just like me, but I hadn't forgotten. And if they wanted to erase me from the company I helped build, they'd have to do it legally. With quorum, which meant one thing, they'd have to remember who I was first. It was a Friday, of course. They always do this shit on Fridays, right before close of business, like they think the weekend will dilute the sting. Like giving you 48 hours to cry into your wine glass somehow softens the blow of being quietly shoved off a cliff. My calendar pinged at 3:12 p.m., quick sync W/HR. No subject, no prep, just vibes, that's how they do it now. Ambush style, cold-blooded. Her name was Denise. New HR director, all heels, veneers, and fake empathy. She shook my hand like she was doing me a favor, then gestured to the conference room like it was her private stage. I stepped inside and instantly clocked the manila folder on the table, thick enough to be serious, and enough to mean I was already gone. She sat across from me, posture perfect, her expression a blend of botoxed concern and managerial detachment. "Barbara," she began, in that tone they all use, like they're reading a script written by someone who's never had to fire anyone in their lives. "We've been reviewing some exciting internal alignment opportunities," and I tuned out. My ears were already ringing. She pushed the folder toward me like it was a gift basket. Label on the tab, "Restructuring Package Confidential." I opened it. Inside, 3 pages of corporate throat clearing and a proposed new title, Internal Operations Support Partner. No department, no budget control, no strategic oversight, just enough responsibility to drown in, not enough authority to swim. I wasn't being fired, I was being erased. She kept talking, droning on about flattening the org and unlocking synergies. I stared at the offer letter without blinking. The base salary was lower. The bonus tier was gone. My reporting line had shifted to someone who used to ask me how to schedule Google Calendar invites. My gut twisted, my chest burned, but my face still, cold, silent. Then she said it, we don't negotiate. 4 words, and I swear I heard something in my brain crack like an old bone resetting. She said it so casually, like it was protocol. Like the woman across from her hadn't spent 10 years building the company she now pretended to represent. Like I was just another line item to be optimized. I closed the folder gently, didn't ask a single question, didn't even pretend to be shocked. Denise blinked like she was waiting for tears or a fight or a thank you for the privilege of being gutted politely. I gave her none of it. I stood up, slid the folder back across the table, and said, I'll have my response shortly. She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already walking out. I didn't slam the door, that would have given them a scene. I didn't take the long route through the open office. No need to make a show of things. Just a quiet exit, the kind that makes people uncomfortable because it doesn't fit their script. The elevator ride down was silent. My reflection stared back at me from the mirrored walls, pale, unreadable. The same woman who'd once camped under her desk during a product outage to fix a billing glitch that would have nuked our MRR. The same woman who'd stayed during a Thanksgiving layoff round to hand out tissues and Uber codes to crying analysts. The same woman now being packaged and repurposed like expired inventory. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream into the steering wheel. I drove home like it was any other Friday. Picked up takeout from the Thai place near my building. Tipped extra, said thank you. Then I locked my apartment door, kicked off my flats, and walked to my desk in the corner of the living room, past the dry fern I hadn't watered in weeks, the untouched mail, the framed print from our first series of Party, back when everyone was still pretending to be a family. I pulled out the encrypted hard drive from the drawer beneath the printer, connected it to my laptop, and typed the 36-character passphrase from memory. The drive spun to life. A folder opened. Founder Clause Execution. I clicked it. Inside, a PDF titled Addendum 12.4b Klein Authorship Rights, timestamped, digitally notarized, archived through a compliance proxy I'd retained long after everyone else had forgotten I'd helped draft the damn bylaws. It was still valid, still binding. My name, Barbara Klein, listed as a contributing governance party under the founder's operational continuity provision. They thought I was some relic, some ghost of startup past. But ghosts know where the bodies are buried, and I'd left a clause buried deep enough in the company's DNA to outlast the shiny HR scripts and mid-tier ladder climbers. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I just opened a new tab, pulled up the Stratwell internal HR portal, and prepared a very short, very specific email to HR@Stratwell Internal CC, legal@Stratwell Internal subject, Addendum 12.4b immediate review requested attachment, Klein Addendum Founder Clause PDF no body text, no explanation, just the clause. I hit send. Then I sat back in my chair, cracked open my Thai leftovers, and waited for Monday. It hadn't been impulse. Nothing about this was impulsive. Weeks before Denise ever flounced into that conference room with her bullet-pointed corporate euthanasia, I already knew the arc they were plotting for me. The signs had been trickling in like leaks behind drywall. You can't see them at first, but the rot spreads whether you admit it or not. I'd been reassigned to special projects 3 months ago, which is Silicon Valley code, for we don't know where to put you, but you're still politically dangerous to fire outright. I was suddenly invited to meetings with no agendas, added as optional on anything strategic, and my name began disappearing from decision threads like it had been algorithmically filtered out. I'd become radioactive, someone they wanted out but couldn't figure out how to eject without getting investor blowback. But I knew how the system worked. Hell, I'd built half of it, so I started building my safety net. Quietly, precisely. Like threading wire through old dynamite. First step, get into the employee document system. Not the public dashboard they show you with your tax forms and benefits. No, the backend archive. The one where HR keeps scanned originals, policy change logs, and every signed agreement you've ever touched. Most people don't even know it exists, but I did. I helped choose the vendor, helped write the access policy. I logged in from my personal machine, using an admin key left behind when they offboarded a former VP of Ops. No one had ever revoked the token. I searched my name. There it was, my original employment contract, along with 6 addendums over the years. Performance-based comp changes, role transitions, non-disclosures. And then I saw it, Addendum 12.4b, the founder's operational continuity clause. Still attached, still bearing my initials, but outdated, too quiet. So I made a new one. I opened a clean doc, copy-pasted the clause text in full, added a signature line, and beneath it wrote, reaffirmed and extended per governance continuity standards, as permitted under Clause 12.4b of the Stratwell Governance Charter. Signatory, Barbara Klein, Foundational Governance Contributor. Then I dated it, 3 weeks back. The day after my restructuring meeting with Jonah, when he told me I was so valuable, moving you out of the critical path to free you up. That's founder speak for get out of the way. I exported the doc as a secured PDF. Then I called Claudia. Claudia Ramirez had been in compliance before we ever had a legal team. She and I once spent 72 straight hours in a windowless room writing our first vendor risk matrix during a heat wave, subsisting on beef jerky and cold brew. She left Stratwell 2 years ago for some fintech unicorn, but we stayed in touch. She owed me. I never called in the favor until now. She picked up on the second ring. Barb, she said, cautious, everything okay, need a timestamp and a legal chain of custody archive. She paused, you're activating it? Yeah, silence, then just send it. I emailed her the document. Within 20 minutes I had a returned file, digitally notarized through a proxy compliance firm in Nevada. Timestamped, blockchained, legally sound, official. From there, it was simple. I logged back into the internal system and uploaded the file to my HR record. Not to the standard employee profile, no, I buried it in the legacy archive folder labeled Foundational Documents Personnel Attachments. It would ping compliance bots, but not HR's Surface dashboards, not unless someone looked intentionally. And then I waited. Until Friday, 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the end of the official business day. Just enough time to land a grenade and walk away before anyone knew what hit them. I drafted the email. No fluff, no panic, just documentation. To HR at Stratwell Internal CC. Legal at Stratwell Internal Subject. Personnel change Klein attachment. Klein Founder Clause Addendum PDF body text. Please review the attached documentation before finalizing any structural reassignment or role alteration as it pertains to my position. This clause is binding under current governance policy and remains in effect. Klein, I hovered over the send button for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to feel the weight of it. Of every birthday I worked through, every founder tantrum I diffused, every ignored suggestion, every time someone asked me to take notes in a meeting I used to run. Then I clicked it. Sent. No fireworks, no pop-ups. Just a single outbound email vanishing into the server like a whisper into a canyon. And then I shut my laptop, poured myself a glass of wine, and let the clause do what it was built to do, wait, until someone tried to erase me. I woke up Monday morning at 6:03 a.m., not because I had an alarm set, because muscle memory doesn't need permission when it's been forged in panic and performance reviews. The apartment was still dark, soft city light bleeding in through blinds I hadn't replaced since the Series B. I sat at the edge of my bed, unmoving, coffee-deprived, waiting for the first signal to come. It didn't take long. 6:19 a.m. Missed call from Brad, CFO's assistant. Useless but anxious, the corporate equivalent of a nervous meerkat. 10 seconds later, a Slack ping. Brad, Finance Ops. Hi Barbara, when you get a sec, can you confirm if you sent something to HR last week? There's a doc circulating and I just want to get clarity. I stared at it, then typed back one word, yes. 7:02 a.m. Email from internal legal. Subject, urgent addendum review body. Barbara, please confirm the origin of the attached file. Is this your signature? D. Jensen, associate counsel attached was the same PDF I sent Friday. Already flagged. Already climbing the internal food chain. I replied, confirmed, signature valid. Clause was previously archived. Please consult original charter documents for reference. No salutations, no emojis, let them feel the distance. 7:33 a.m. HR, radio silence. No apology, no clarification, just absence. Like they were waiting for someone else to step on the landmine first. Then at 8:12 a.m. my calendar updated. Ad hoc 9:01 a.m. strategic alignment, no details, no organizer. Just a time, a link, and the passive-aggressive capitalization of someone trying not to panic. I clicked the link at 9:00 a.m. on the dot. Camera off. Ike muted, waiting. First in the room, CFO James Russell. Expensive haircut, fear in his eyes. He didn't say a word, just adjusted his tie 3 times in 30 seconds and kept glancing at something off-screen. Probably legal. Probably HR in a silent huddle somewhere, trying to scrub my name off a whiteboard. Next came legal, 2 associates, one junior, one visibly sweating through his collar. They both nodded like I wasn't there, like the screen wasn't already showing my name in the corner. And then, at 9:01 a.m. exactly, the third tile appeared. A plain background, no virtual blur, just a man's face, older tanned eyes that didn't blink often. His name popped into view, Martin B., lead capital partner. Silence. Russell cleared his throat. Martin, thank you for joining. We were hoping to, provide some context. Martin raised a hand. Just one, flat and final. Russell shut up like someone pulled his plug. Then Martin said, read her addendum. Russell blinked. Of course, just let me pull it up. I've already read it, Martin said, voice steady like a surgeon's. I want you to read it. Out loud. There was a long pause. And I watched, mic still muted, camera off, as the man who once called me Barb from Ops like I was a mascot now fumbled through his inbox like a freshman who forgot his homework. He opened the file. I heard a shaky breath. Russell began reading. Pursuant to Clause 12.4b of the Stratwell Governance Charter, I, Barbara Klein, foundational contributor and designated governance advisor during pre-funding incorporation, do hereby reaffirm my status as a protected governance party. Any material reassignment, demotion, or termination of this role shall require full investor quorum approval. As stipulated, he trailed off. Words clanged like bells in an empty church. Martin tilted his head slightly. Is her name listed on the original addendum? Russell swallowed. It appears so, yes. Was it ever rescinded? Not to my knowledge. Did you approve her reassignment with full quorum consent from lead capital? Russell didn't answer. James, Martin repeated, a faint edge now in his voice. Did you or did you not obtain quorum sign-off from lead capital before executing this change? Russell looked off-screen again. Probably to Denise. Probably to legal. They offered him nothing but blank silence. I don't believe we did, he admitted, barely above a whisper. Martin closed his eyes, just for a second. Then, I'm invoking halt protocol per governance standards. Russell straightened. Excuse me? No further structural decisions, staffing changes, or capital allocations are to be made until this is resolved, Martin said. Effective immediately. You'll receive a memo within the hour. Silence. Then, like a bullet, you fired our quorum, and with that, Martin ended the call. His screen vanished. Russell sat frozen. Legal fumbled to mute themselves. I didn't say a word, just ended the call quietly. Then I opened a blank document, titled it Next Steps, and began writing. I didn't log off right away. I sat there, camera off, mic muted, letting the silence bleed through the speakers like it could drip into my apartment and stain the floor. No one had said my name. No one dared. It was hanging there in the digital air, heavy as an indictment, light as dust. Russell was still on the call, so were legal. The junior counsel looked like he might throw up into his coffee. The older one, Jensen, tried to rally. I believe there may be some procedural ambiguity here, he began, adjusting his glasses like they were responsible for what just happened. The clause in question, while still technically present in our founding documents, was assumed, though not formally retired, to have lapsed under standard operational evolution. Martin, the investor, cut him off with a breath. Just a slow inhale through the nose like he was smelling something dead. I'm going to ask again, Martin said, calm like a judge but with none of the pretense. Did you, or did you not, alter the structural role of a named governance party without quorum? No one answered, so he asked it again. Louder this time, each word carefully unwrapped like it was meant for transcript. Did you just fire our quorum? Even Russell, whose whole job was pretending nothing was ever his fault, couldn't spin it. He started flipping through digital folders on his screen, muttering to himself like he could control plus Z a governance clause. I wasn't aware she still had, then you didn't check. Well, HR led that transition. Do you sign off on strategic personnel realignments? Yes, but then you fired our quorum. Martin's voice was ice. No yelling, no threats, just that precise kind of quiet that makes grown men rethink their lives. You could hear keys clacking as someone tried to look busy. A throat cleared. The sound of a digital panic spiral. Martin continued. Barbara Klein was listed as a governance party in the original addendum. She was also one of two authors of the operational continuity clause. This was not symbolic. This was enforceable. And it is enforceable. Unless you have formal documentation of a rescission or role sunset acknowledged by quorum, she remains protected. And by removing her from a strategic seat, you triggered a compliance failure. Jensen spoke up again. To be clear, this could be interpreted as a structural ambiguity if it's not ambiguous, Martin snapped. A pause, then quiet and lethal. You don't accidentally fire quorum. Russell sat back, pale now. I could almost see the spreadsheet unraveling in his head. Bonus projections, timeline assumptions, hiring freeze contingencies. It was all unwinding now, like a cheap sweater someone tugged too hard. I'm issuing a formal pause on all board-level approvals, Martin said. No hiring, no terminations, no financial disbursements over $5,000, no product pivots, no reorgs, nothing moves until this is resolved. Jensen tried one more time. Would it be possible to request a discretionary window of no, Martin said. You played games with structure. Now structure plays games with you. He turned slightly, as if speaking to someone off camera, then looked directly into the lens one last time. I'll expect documentation of every leadership change made post-Series B on my desk by tomorrow morning. And I want a compliance team review of HR protocols. If we find any more violations hiding under buzzwords, I'm pulling funding. He didn't end the call with a goodbye, he just vanished. His square blinked out, one less tile in the corporate mosaic. Legal bailed next, then Brad, then a stunned silence. The call was still open, but the room had collapsed. Russell stared blankly into the screen like it might give him answers. I ended the call. Still no words from me, not yet. I didn't gloat. I didn't pour a drink. I didn't call Claudia or text the one other exec who still spoke to me like I wasn't office wallpaper. Instead, I opened the Stratwell internal Slack, scrolled to the general channel, Scrolled further. Backdated posts, status updates, fake Shiri Friday gifs. And then I saw it. 1 week ago, congrats to Barbara Klein on her new role as strategic ops support, party popper 4 likes. One was from Denise, one from Russell. I stared at it for a moment. Then I took a screenshot. Saved it to a new folder titled Discovery Phase because the fight wasn't over. It hadn't even started. By 9:37 a.m., my inbox was melting. It started with a single invite from a board admin I hadn't heard from in over a year. Subject: Governance Review Touchpoint Urgent. Then another pinged in, this one from the product lead's chief of staff, followed by one from finance titled Only Flagged Items Compliance. By 9:42, I had 7 invites, a dozen Slack DMs, and 2 meeting requests marked private from people who used to pretend not to see me in the elevator. The strategic pause, though, that was the first domino they couldn't hide. At 10:12 a.m., the dev team's public roadmap calendar turned gray. Q4 launch delayed, no explanation. Just a silent, sudden vacuum where a product milestone used to be. Marketing tried to backpedal with a refinement sprint announcement, but no one bought it. Word travels fast in offices built on surveillance and Slack threads. The panic wasn't loud. It was sterile, professional, and deeply, deliciously visible. Then came the real sign. 10:46 a.m. My company card was declined. I'd ordered my usual from the corner cafe, cold brew, no syrup, double shot. The barista scanned the card like she always did. Then she looked up, pity flickering behind her nose ring. Says it's frozen, she said softly. I smiled, pulled out my personal Visa, and paid cash. I didn't bother emailing finance. I knew what was happening. The company wasn't just freezing me out, it was freezing everything. If you pause one governance party's authority, you have to pause all strategic channels until legal untangles the mess. That includes expenditures. That includes P&L reports. That includes little Barbara Klein buying her $5.25 morning caffeine on the company's dime. By the time I got back to my apartment, the Slack channels had transformed. Gone were the performative gifs and backpatting threads. In their place, the digital equivalent of people ducking under desks during an earthquake. The Hash People Ops channel went silent. The normally overactive Hash Strategy channel posted a vague hold tight message from Russell followed by 5 straight hours of nothing. It was like watching a city go dark one block at a time. And then came the text. From Rick. The Rick, founder Rick. Original vest-wearing, burrito-loving, VC-hustling Rick who once called me the heart of the ops team during a tequila-fueled all-hands. Rick 10:59 a.m., you triggered the clause? Damn, that was all he wrote, no apology, no context, just 2 words and a whole history packed into them. I didn't reply. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. I wanted to say something. Remind him of the night we wrote the first vendor risk protocol on the back of pizza boxes, or the time I drove 4 hours to hand-deliver a term sheet he forgot at home before a series of pitch, or the endless times I stood between him and a bad decision. But instead, I archived the message. Then I opened my laptop, refreshed my email, and saw something that made me pause, a calendar request from Megha, the other founder. She hadn't contacted me in over a year. Not even a birthday Slack or a tag in those saccharine women of Stratwell posts during International Women's Month. Her invite subject line was blank, but the location field read, private Zoom just us. Scheduled for noon, I accepted. No message, no emoji, just clicked yes. Then I did what no one at Stratwell was doing that morning. I got dressed like it was war. Black blazer, hair pulled back, no lipstick. Just foundation, clear eyes, and the ghost of someone who once believed they mattered. I made a fresh cup of coffee. On my dime. Then I sat at my desk, opened a clean legal pad, and wrote 2 words across the top in block letters. Damage inventory, because now that the clause had detonated, they were going to come crawling. And I needed to know exactly how much they owed me. The 3 p.m. board advisory call was unlike anything I'd ever been invited to, because this time, I wasn't there to take notes or offer background context like some polite operational ghost haunting the edge of legitimacy. This time, I was there because I had to be. Legally, per clause, per signature. Per the concrete they poured their precious startup into while I held the damn wheel straight. The Zoom invite came directly from the investor's office, marked governance parties, only clause 12.4 advisory review. Not a single Stratwell exec on the organizer list. Just me, Martin from Lead Capital, an external compliance rep named Carla, and 2 board members who didn't even try to hide their confusion when they saw my name on the tile. Barbara Klein? One of them muttered as he joined, brow crinkling like he'd stumbled into a time machine. Martin was already there, of course. He didn't do small talk, just launched right in. We'll be auditing all role changes enacted since the Series B round, he said, nodding to Carla, effective immediately. Carla, your team will coordinate directly with Stratwell's legal and HR teams. We'll want full documentation on reporting line alterations, promotions, terminations, and salary band modifications. If you find gaps, you escalate. One of the board members finally spoke up. Is that necessary? I mean, this clause issue, Barbara's situation, might be isolated, no? Martin didn't even blink. You fired quorum. Nothing is isolated. If one clause was ignored, others could have been as well. Until proven otherwise, we assume systemic failure. The second board member adjusted his mic nervously. And Barbara's status? Martin leaned forward just slightly. Protected, elevated, operationally critical. You'll treat her accordingly until this matter is fully resolved. My camera stayed off, but I smiled. I'd waited 10 years to hear someone say that out loud. Then the floodgates opened. Slack screenshots started leaking. First, from an internal compliance channel, someone had dumped a thread where legal debated whether anyone even checks the founder's addendum anymore. Another showed HR panicking in real time the previous Friday. Denise, poor, brittle Denise, typing, wait, who the hell is Carla Ramirez? Followed by 3 typing dots that never completed. That one got reposted across 3 teams with the caption, "You in danger, girl." Then came the update no one expected, but everyone felt coming. An HR all-staff email at 4:17 p.m. Subject line, leadership transition. Buried beneath a wall of buzzwords was a single sentence that mattered. Effective immediately, Denise Holland will be stepping down from her role as head of people operations to pursue new opportunities. Translation, she ran out of places to hide. 10 minutes later, another internal memo hit finance. James Russell, CFO, would be on leave. No return date specified. No temporary replacement announced. Just gone. The man who once told me to my face, "Ops doesn't build equity," Barb, had been iced without ceremony. No farewell Zoom, no Slack confetti. Just a disappearance like a bad line of code quietly deleted. I didn't gloat, not really. Okay, maybe a little, because here's the truth, I didn't want their jobs, I wanted their accountability. I wanted the spreadsheet of sins they'd racked up while patting themselves on the back for having quarterly wellness Wednesdays. I wanted the receipts, and the receipts were coming. Carla messaged me directly after the call. Carla R., compliance lead, pulling all the old role transition logs. Your archive formatting made this easy. Also, who backdated your addendum timestamp? Smart as hell. I typed back, favor owed. Long story, you'll like it. Replied with a single line, they really underestimated you, huh? I sat there staring at that message. They all did, but not anymore. Now the board had to look me in the face. Now compliance had to put me on their project plans. Now the same people who once sent interns to loop Barbara in if she's still around were watching as I rewrote the recovery roadmap, one clause, one audit, one missing signature at a time. I wasn't angry anymore. I was necessary, and I wasn't going anywhere. The email came in at 6:07 a.m. Tuesday morning. Not from HR, they'd learned their lesson, but from a new executive liaison looped directly under the board. Subject line, reinstatement and elevation proposal confidential. They'd even used my full name, Barbara Lynn Klein. Probably to sound respectful, maybe to make it official. The body was thick with language I used to write for other people. We recognize your foundational contributions. It is our intent to restore alignment. We hope this reflects your value to the organization. And there it was, buried halfway down like a sugared bribe. We would be honored to offer you reinstatement at your prior level of authority, plus elevation to SVP, with commensurate compensation and bonus eligibility. I reread it 3 times, and I hit reply. Appreciate the gesture. I'm not interested in a promotion. I am, however, interested in reform. And then I sent the proposal, not a PowerPoint, not a PDF. A plain text doc, bare bones, no flourish. Title, Governance Integrity Initiative. 2 pages long. It outlined 3 goals. 1. Formal review of all personnel governance documentation going back to Series A. 2. Establishment of a permanent governance reform committee composed of non-executive employees and external compliance advisors. 3. Designation of a lead advisory role, temporary, rotating, with initial oversight by a foundational governance contributor. I didn't name myself explicitly. I didn't have to. I attached the original clause. I hit send. By 8:24 a.m. I had a reply, not from the board, not from the liaison, from Martin, approved. Draft your team, start this week. It was that simple. No welcome back parade, no performance bonus, just authority, raw and uncloaked. And that's when the real unraveling began. Because once you open the door to truth, it tends to flood the house. By Wednesday afternoon, Stratwell's internal org chart began quietly updating. The decorative VPs, the ones who lived in airports and PowerPoints, who introduced themselves at meetings with titles like VP of Strategic Synergy, started disappearing. Not with press releases or all-hands shout-outs. Just quiet departures. Meetings canceled, calendars emptied, email addresses that suddenly bounced. One by one, the LinkedIn updates trickled in, excited to announce I'm starting a new chapter, translation. They'd been cut loose before the tide turned fully against them. In their place, actual operators, people who knew what the company did, not just what it wanted to sound like. I handpicked some. Others rose up naturally once the dead weight cleared out, and HR replaced entirely. The new interim head, a former compliance officer with a background in ethics law. First internal Slack she posted wasn't a meme or a mental health quote. It was a link to the whistleblower protection policy. Pinned. By Friday, the reform committee was real. Official, funded. And I was sitting in my apartment, same desk, same half-dead fern in the corner, reading through applications from junior analysts who'd never dared speak up before. They were brave now, not because they were fearless, but because someone had finally made fear feel like the lesser risk. One of them ended their letter with this: I don't know if I'm qualified, but I know what fairness should look like, and I'm ready to help build that. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, and I wrote back personally. Short and honest. That's more qualification than most VPs ever had. Welcome aboard. That night I got another text from Rick. Guess this is your company now? I didn't respond, because it never was his to begin with. He just got to put his name on it first. The boardroom was staged like a peace summit, glossy table, too many screens, chairs that creaked with the weight of unspoken regret. Quarterly meeting was live streamed to internal shareholders and select investors, just like always. Except this time, the agenda wasn't growth forecasts or press releases. This time, the opening item was titled, Governance Realignment, Compliance Findings Review. The digital attendance board flickered on. There was Martin, square jaw tighter than usual, seated dead center with the company charter open in front of him like scripture. Carla sat beside him, silent, flanked by 3 legal staffers armed with binders and nervous energy. Board members joined, expressions already stretched thin by weeks of damage control. And then there was me. Camera on, lighting neutral, expression unreadable. I wasn't in the grid as Barbara Klein, Director of Strategic Ops or SVP of Blah Blah Optimization. That title had never mattered. What showed on the screen in plain bold font was this: Barbara Klein, Foundational Governance Party, Addendum 12.4. They couldn't edit that out. They couldn't rename me. They couldn't mute the clause. Martin opened the meeting with no fanfare. No new business today, just one item. He lifted a single-page memo and began to read aloud. Calm, controlled, like a surgeon naming each tool before making the first incision. Per compliance findings and legal review conducted over the past 10 days, Stratwell Dynamics is found to have violated internal governance protocols related to structural authority and decision-making flow. His voice was steady, measured, almost bored. Effective immediately, and in accordance with the Stratwell Governance Charter and its foundational addendum, all authority over structural role changes, strategic realignment, and executive staffing shall be vested solely in named governance parties listed in the 12.4 Founders Addendum. He paused, looked directly at me through the screen. Then, that means you, Miss Klein. He let it hang there like a gavel echo. I didn't smile, I didn't blink. I just nodded once like I was confirming a dinner reservation. The rest of the meeting was noise. Resignations formalized. Compliance oversight measures approved. Carla outlined the review cycle for remaining clauses, and a newly installed ethics subcommittee was introduced with all the enthusiasm of a rebranded disciplinary tribunal. Denise's name was never mentioned. Neither was Russell's. They were ghosts now, faded from the PowerPoint deck of company lore. Their portraits wouldn't hang. Their names wouldn't make the wall. Mine never had. But that was the difference. After the stream ended, I closed my laptop and stood from the chair in the investor's side office, the one Martin offered me after the clause triggered. He said it was temporary, said I could use it for transition. But the staff had already started calling it Barbara's office. Even the nameplate was in production. I walked to the hallway and heard the quiet buzz of custodial staff behind me, unbolting a frame from the wall, Rick's portrait. The founding team photo, him, Jonah, Megha, all 3 of them in hoodies and startup arrogance. They were removing it without ceremony, no speech, no resistance, just replacing the mythology with reality. I didn't stop to watch. I stepped inside the office, poured myself a cup of tea, hibiscus, no sugar, and sat by the window. Outside, the skyline didn't care who built what. Cities don't remember names, they remember structures, and mine still stood. I wasn't loud, I wasn't legacy. I wasn't anyone's favorite story, but I was written into the concrete. I took a sip, still staring straight ahead as the sun caught the curve of a steel beam across the skyline, and I thought to myself, I wasn't just part of the foundation. I was the steel they poured into the concrete. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.